Sometimes in history it is not a nation, but one person who changes the fate of the world. His life may be short, but his name travels through centuries. Alexander of Macedon was one of those people. He was not born to live quietly in a palace. He was born to redraw maps. At just 20 years old, he became king, but his eyes were fixed far beyond the throne. He did not only want to conquer land, he wanted to bring a new way of thinking to the world. His teacher was Aristotle, who taught him books, philosophy, and questions. His father was Philip, who taught him the sword, war, and power. Alexander combined the two, the power of the mind, the power of the sword. Very few in history ever achieved that. This is not only the story of great battles, it is the story of a young man who believed in dreams bigger than himself. He became king at 20, he died at 32. But in those 12 years, he did what many empires could not do in centuries. This is the story of Alexander, the man who built an empire at 20. Alexander was different from childhood. He did not live like other princes, spending his days with feasts, games, and hunting trips. His world was deeper, a world of questions and imagination. His teacher was Aristotle, not just a tutor, one of the greatest minds of the ancient world. Aristotle taught him to look at the stars and wonder, to understand the human soul, how states are built and how they collapse, how every decision has consequences. One day Aristotle showed him a map. At the edges there were large, dark, empty spaces. Aristotle said, "This is the unknown world." Alexander quietly replied, "One day it will be known to me." For him, an empire was not a line drawn on paper. An empire was the courage to step forward when others hesitate. One of the moments that changed him was the horse named Bucephalus. No one could tame it. Wild, furious, uncontrollable. Everyone stepped back. Alexander moved forward. He realized something simple yet powerful. The horse was afraid of its own shadow. He turned the horse toward the sun. The shadow disappeared. The horse calmed. At that moment, his father said the words that became legend. "My son, you are not born only for yourself. You are born for the world." Even as a child, Alexander asked himself, why are some nations ruled? Why do others rule? Why is the world divided this way? The empire was already built in his mind. His body was simply waiting to grow into it. He didn't ask, "Can I do it?" He asked, "Why shouldn't it be bigger?" He was a child, but he did not think like one. The most dangerous kind of person in history is the one who dreams and does not fear those dreams. Alexander was exactly that kind of person. When Alexander was 20 years old, his father, King Philip II, was assassinated. The kingdom was on the brink of breaking apart. There were rebellions inside and enemies waiting outside. Everyone thought, he is too young, he won't be able to rule. But he said one sentence, "Macedonia is not just land, Macedonia is me." He crushed the rebellions with lightning speed. He united the Greek city-states, and then he said, "Now it is the Persian Empire's turn." The greatest empire in the world, the Persian Empire. Its borders stretched from seas to deserts. King Darius ruled over armies that seemed endless. And standing against him was a young man barely past the age of 20, Alexander. On paper, this confrontation made no sense. On one side, a vast empire, on the other, a small Macedonian kingdom. The generals of Darius laughed. "This boy wants to fight Persia?" But Alexander was no boy. He had already made his decision, not to wait for the enemy at home, but to carry the war into the enemy's home. When he addressed his soldiers, he said, "They fight with numbers, we fight with heart." The Persians had power in their size. Alexander's army had power in their belief. He did not simply give orders, he gave his men conviction. Some trembled when they heard the name Darius. Alexander replied, "The greatest fear of the king you fear is that he fears you." Then his campaign began like lightning. He crossed the Hellespont, he marched through Asia, he took city after city. Everywhere people asked the same question. Who is going to stop this young man? In Darius's palace, worry began to spread. Messages arrived one after another. Alexander didn't stop. Alexander defeated another army. Alexander is getting closer. This was no longer only a clash between armies. This was an army of fear against an army of belief. And something rare in history was happening. A young general was challenging the greatest ruler on earth. 333 BC, near the river Issus. Narrow valleys, tight ground, and two great armies face to face. On one side, King Darius of the Persian Empire, commanding an army so vast it seemed to have no end. On the other, the young Macedonian king, Alexander. His army was smaller, but in his eyes there was no thought of turning back. This battle was not just about land, it was the answer to a question: who will rule the world? When the Persian army formed its lines, the horizon seemed to darken. There were simply that many of them. People whispered, "This time Alexander will lose." But he did not see fear. He saw opportunity. The size of the Persian army was their strength, but also their weakness. Narrow ground, crowded formation, little room to maneuver. Alexander struck exactly at that weakness. He made the boldest decision: to attack the center, where Darius himself stood. He rode forward like lightning. Long spears crashed into the Persian lines like waves. For the first time, Darius saw danger rushing straight toward him, and he was afraid. Even kings have moments when they run. That moment happened at Issus. Darius left the battlefield. His army collapsed behind him. Alexander entered the royal tent of Darius and found only an empty throne. He captured the family of Darius, yet spoke like a king, not a conqueror. "You are not prisoners. Your enemy is not me. It is your destiny." After Issus, the world was no longer the same. The myth of Persian invincibility was broken. Alexander's name spread across continents. Darius felt his power slipping away for the first time. History wrote only one simple sentence about this battle: Issus was the moment a young king challenged the world. And from that moment on, Alexander was not just a king, he was the man who changed the direction of history. On one side stood King Darius III, with the largest army the ancient world had ever seen: war elephants, scythe chariots, endless infantry and cavalry. On the other side stood Alexander with a smaller army, but with discipline, speed, and something even stronger: purpose. This was not just another battle. This was a decision. Who will shape the future of the world? Darius believed numbers would crush Alexander. He had the ground leveled for his chariots. He was sure the young Macedonian would finally fall. But Alexander did not plan to fight the Persian army. He planned to break the Persian heart. He drew the Persians to one side, created a gap in their center, and then struck like a spear directly into it. His companion cavalry charged behind him, dust rising, steel flashing in the sun. Darius saw the Macedonian king riding straight toward him, and he did what kings almost never admit: he fled. The greatest empire of its age collapsed not only on the battlefield, but in spirit. Alexander entered the cities of the Persians, sat on the royal throne of Darius, and the ancient world understood. Persia had fallen, a new world order had begun, history had changed direction. Gaugamela was not simply a victory, it was the moment when the ancient world passed from one hand into another. From that day forward, Alexander was no longer just a conqueror. He became the man who redesigned history itself. In Egypt, he was proclaimed pharaoh. A new city was founded, Alexandria. He marched into Central Asia. He reached as far as India. His soldiers grew tired, but he still said, "The world is not finished. There are victories beyond the edge of the map." Then one day there was silence. The soldiers said, "Enough!" And the greatest general of the empire, for the first time, turned back. Alexander fell ill at the age of only 32. Neither physicians nor priests could save him. Maps lay open before him, but he could no longer rise to follow them. His soldiers stood in silence outside his tent. His generals asked only one question: "To whom do you leave the empire?" Alexander smiled and answered, "To the strongest." With that sentence, the empire was divided, but his name was not. He did not only conquer lands, he conquered a way of thinking. He left behind new cities, new routes, and a new culture, the Hellenistic world. He lived a short life, but cast a long shadow. Some say he died too young. Perhaps the truth is this: he lived long enough to fill centuries. And history remembered one name: Alexander, the man who built an empire at 20. If you enjoyed the video, please like it and share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next historical stories. Your support helps us create more content like this.